Greetings to class 10 students and welcome to your economic application class with your Nigam sir. Again, I have come up with another video on the same chapter, that is inflation. In the last video, that is lesson 1, we studied about the meaning of the term inflation and its different types. In this video, we are going to study the effects of inflation. Before we move on to the effects of inflation, let us revise whatever we know about the inflation. The term inflation refers to a situation of continuous rise in the general price level of all goods and services during a given period of time. So, what are the effects of inflation? Inflation generally has wide effect on economic, social, moral and political life of every country. Here in this video we are going to discuss the effects of inflation under the following three heads. Firstly, the effects of inflation on purchasing power of money, effects on production, and lastly, effect on distribution. Let us first discuss the effects of inflation on the purchasing power of money. So, what do you mean by purchasing power? Purchasing power of money simply means the amount of goods and services that a unit of money can buy. So, what happens to the purchasing power during inflation is that the real income generally falls, which means that people are able to buy less quantity of goods and services than before. So, this means that the purchasing power of money generally goes down during the time of inflation. Because if we compare it with the previous time period when there is no inflation, and if we compare it with the time period when inflation has taken place, then during the inflation we are able to buy less amount of commodities than before. So that is because the value of money goes down during the time of inflation and we are able to buy less quantities of commodities. So this is how inflation affects the purchasing power of money. Secondly, we have the effects of inflation on production. So as we all know, whenever there is a moderate rise in the price of a commodity, it has a good effect or favorable effect on production. Because whenever there is an increase in the price of a commodity, the profits in them generally increases, and which induces the businessman or the producer to produce more by seeing more and more profits. So as a result, what happens? There will be an increase in output or production, and whenever there is more of production, there is more requirement of workers. As a result, the employment opportunities will be generated. So, a moderate rise in price of a commodity increases the output and employment. But this happens up to a certain limit. If the price keeps on rising continuously and the economy experiences running and hyperinflation, then that proves to be harmful for production as well. So a moderate rise in price is good for production, but a hyperinflation or a very high rate of inflation is bad for production as well. So this is how inflation affects the production. Now we have the effects of inflation on distribution. So there are different sections of people in the economy, and the inflation has varied effects on different sections of the people. We have different section of people like debtors, creditors, fixed income earners, businessmen, farmers, etc. So the effect of inflation on all of this different section of people has different effect. So now let us understand how inflation affects the debtors and the creditors. Debtors are those person who usually borrow money, and the creditors on the other hand are the one who lends money. So now first we understand how the inflation affects the debtors. Usually during the time of inflation, debtors gain. Why? Because they usually borrow money at a time when the value of money is high, and they are able to buy more commodities with the borrowed money, and they return the money at a time when the inflation has taken place and the value of money has fallen. So they are normally the gainers during the time of inflation. On the other hand, the creditors are the losers. Although they get the same amount of money, but they get the money at a time when the value of money has fallen and they are able to buy less commodity with the same amount of money. So, during the time of inflation, the creditors are the losers and the debtors are the gainers. Now, let us understand the effect of inflation on the wage and the salaried class or the fixed income earners. So, uh, how does inflation affect this section of the people is that during inflation, the wage and the salaried persons are the sufferers. It is because the wages and the salary do not increase by the same rate as the rise in the prices of goods and services. If there is an inflation of 10%, then there might be an increment in their salary only by 5%. So, the inflation rate is more than the rise in their income. So, they are the sufferers. The wage and the salaried person are the sufferer during the time of inflation. So, similar effect is seen in the fixed income earners. So, whenever the inflation happens, the purchasing power of money falls and they are able to buy less amount of commodities than before. So, that is why the fixed income earners who are earning fixed income, they are also the sufferer because with the same income, they are able to buy less amount of goods and services than before. Now let us move to the business community, that is the traders, producer, entrepreneurs, manufacturer, etc. So how does inflation affect them is that they are usually the gainers or they usually gain during inflation because of the following reasons. The number one, value of the stock of goods and raw materials usually go up during inflation, which normally increases their profits. So this is the reason why why the business community gain during inflation, because the value of the goods that is stored in their stocks usually go up and they are able to earn more profits in them. The second reason is that the price of the commodity that they are selling increases at a faster rate than the cost of production, the cost of producing the goods. So the price at which they are selling the commodity increases at a rapid rate than the price of the cost of producing one unit of a commodity. Thirdly, the business community or the traders are normally the borrowers or they are normally the debtors, and the debtors during the time of inflation are the gainers. So this is how business community are favorably impacted by inflation. Now let us see the effects of inflation on farmer. During inflation, the farmer normally gain because they are able to sell their crops at a higher prices. The farmers usually are also the borrowers or the debtor because they borrow for many agricultural purposes. So the farmers are also the gainers during the time of inflation. However, we can see that small farmers do not gain during inflation because they keep a majority portion of their produced crops for self consumption, so that they do not have to buy the same commodity at the increased rate afterwards. So the small farmers are not the gainers during inflation. These were the different effects of inflation on different sections of the society. We have come to the end of this video. I hope you have understood, and thank you for watching this video.